As the world continues to change, the face of the American dream will also continue to transform. Since 1988, Rainforest Trust's dream has been a world where nature is protected for all species, including our own.
The Rainforest Trust is really focused on two critical problems facing humankind. The first is the loss of nature, the loss of biodiversity, the extinction of species. And the second, which people know more about, is climate change. And from the beginning, Rainforest Trust addressed these two issues by protecting habitat. By far, the number one cause of biodiversity loss, of the destruction of nature, is the destruction of habitats. There are many sides of conservation that are really critical, but probably the strategy that has to be at the core is simply protecting land and habitat. I think the biggest misconception people have about Rainforest Trust's mission is that it pits nature against people. Everything we do involves local people, and conservation can't succeed without local people.
The first project of Rainforest Trust in 1989 was to save an 11,000-acre cloud forest in Guatemala. Their project was so successful that to this date, the area is still being taken care of by defenders of nature. However, as years passed by, the team encountered an obstacle they couldn't avoid.
By around 2010, the leadership of the organization realized that while the organization was doing great work, that impact was local. It wasn't global. And meanwhile, the world was still losing habitat, still losing species to extinction. And this new threat of climate change had come along, and that was escalating fast. So the team looked at the organization and said, the first thing we need is a better name. They did a little bit of market research, they talked to people, they realized that the majority of our work was and continues to be saving rainforests. A brief aside, why saving rainforests? Because rainforests are the habitat on Earth which houses the most species, which harbors the most species. They said, okay, if our number one focus is saving rainforests, then why not just call us Rainforest Trust? So a year after the name change in 2013, the organization also realized that there was huge need in the rest of the tropics, in Africa and Asia. And so in 2013, the organization committed to expanding our mission to cover all of the world's tropics. To date, we protected 45 million acres of critical habitat. That's an area almost the size of New England. And we're currently working on another 60 million. So those acres, protected and in progress, provide home for an astonishing 40% of all the threatened bird and mammal species on Earth. The trees and the soil on those acres store some 7.2 billion tons of carbon, which is, believe it or not, more than the entire carbon emissions of the United States each year. Moreover, more and more of the projects we do not only involve local people, but actually achieve conservation and protect land by providing land title for local and indigenous people who've lived on the land in forever, but haven't actually had the right to own or manage that land. That's really the most exciting new trend in global conservation, is the shift towards protecting habitat through partnership with indigenous people.
With heightened emphasis on the importance of conserving critical habitats in partnership with indigenous peoples, Rainforest Trust is now in the midst of their biggest and most daunting project to date.
In the same year, in 2016, the most famous conservation biologist in the world, Ed Wilson, published his book, Half Earth, advocating that in order to save nature and provide a future for humanity, eventually we would need 50% of the Earth's cover to be for nature. He joined Rainforest Trust board the next year in 2017 in order to promote that mission. And by 2020, when we launched a new strategic plan, we were willing to throw our weight behind the movement to achieve 30% of the Earth protected by 2030. Astonishingly, by the time the world's nations gathered together in 2022 to hash this out, we and others were able to persuade them that 30 by 30, that is 30% of the Earth's lands and 30% of the Earth's waters protected by 2030, that was a realistic goal, and they bought into it unanimously.
With this incredibly significant project, the team behind Rainforest Trust has a clear vision on what they should focus on to achieve their goal.
The answer is the Amazon in Brazil. And that's because for many years, the government of Brazil did not allow further protection of the Amazon, and deforestation increased. And you may have heard about fires in the Amazon. It was a terrible, terrible problem. In the beginning of this year, a new president came in, a new administration, fantastic new environment minister, herself from the Amazon. And they pledged zero deforestation in the Amazon by 2030. And they also pledged that between now and the end of their term, so 4 years, they would work to save as much unprotected Amazon rainforest as they possibly could. What we know is that once we create indigenous territories in the Brazilian Amazon, and once we create national parks, that even if future governments are not supportive of conservation, the protection sticks. Finally, the other exciting thing is that in the Brazilian Amazon, the objectives of indigenous people and human rights campaigners completely align with the objectives of conservationists and the objectives of people fighting climate change. They're all aligned, because the best way to lock up land, the best way to save species, the best way to fight climate change is to partner with indigenous people and provide them with rights to steward the land.